We're lucky enough to have one of the world's largest firms send one of their CIOs to come be with us. So Justin, please start making your way up to the stage. And Jay Valentine from Inpensa. So Jay previously was with Aptio and has many great stories. And in my opinion, he's the perfect enterprise sales rep. And to call him a sales rep is a terrible disgrace to him. He's just a genius, wizard, great investor, a whole bunch of wonderful things. But I've known him for 4 years. And Justin, I'm just getting the pleasure of meeting today. But everyone knows Cargill, and you eat it every day in some way, shape, or form. And I'd love to have you both come up on stage, and I can bring chairs if you'd like for the interview. So come on up.
So what Andy's asked us to do, is to go through some of the questions that came up earlier in the session when Justin wasn't here, and I reviewed some of them with him. And the reason is that he is essentially the ultimate buyer for a lot of the services and a lot of the products that people here have inquired about. So what we did is stepped outside and I walked through some of the things that came up as questions. So what I was going to do now is interview Justin in some detail and have him as a buyer, the person who is a CIO of an enterprise that if it were a public corporation would be one of the top 20 largest corporations in the world, talk about what's going on in the cloud and what the CIO is actually thinking about in terms of buying. So I'm going to just ask the question and then sure. we'll begin. When you came to Cargill, what was the charter that you had? It could have been in the area of cutting costs, it could have been in the area of new business, it could have been in the area of flexibility, but what in general was the charter that you had?
Sure. So I've been at Cargill for 9 months now and recently moved to Minneapolis. So I'm learning a little bit about the Midwest. Everyone said this was a typical winter. No? No? Yes? No? So I was charged with two things primarily. The first is we have some pretty big assets that are information technology assets in the corporation, some more highly utilized than others. And we have one in particular that's not utilized as much as we would like. So can we get that pretty big asset we have utilized, and can we get value out of it? So not so much the cost, but really getting a much higher level of utilization out of our big investment, and then a lot more value out of it. The second was IT in general. Cargill's in the midst of a transformation of the entire function and really kind of pushing the bar up for the business to really understand what process data and technology is and how to utilize it much more effectively as a business leader. So the challenge from the board of directors to the senior most business leaders and then across the corporation is let's get a lot better at that. So how do we organize the information technology function? How do we set ourselves up? And how do we go to market inside of Cargill so that we help with that problem?
So as an overall way of describing that, would one be able to say that you were charged with running IT more like a business?
Exactly. So if you were to put it in a real short phrase, that's the charge, and that's the underpinning of our strategy and everything that we're trying to do inside of Cargill. It's big, so there's a lot of business, there's a lot of IT business out there for Cargill if you're an IT employee. So it's really how do we run ourselves much more like a business.
So in some of the discussions that we had earlier in the day, running IT like a business, and you're at a cloud computing conference. So talk about your view of cloud computing. I think one of the things I'd ask you is, what is your definition of cloud computing?
Sure. Cloud computing was the definition we were outside talking about. So I think of it less as a technology, maybe not even at all like a technology. I think of it as a capability. We have users in IT, and we provision those users with with whatever they need to do to get their job done, and there's a cost associated with provisioning those users, those employees, right? Very, very important for our employees to have everything they need. And so what happens, so we're a large corporation, we're adding employees all the time, and we have employees going away all the time, either through attrition, merger, acquisition, divestiture, joint venture. We have this going on all over the world. So one of the big things is how do we life cycle that user? And how much of the cost and capability that goes with being a effective Cargill employee using information technology, how much of goes with you when you go away, right? We can fairly quickly provision you once you arrive, but if you go away through some business deal or whatever, do we leave a lot of stranded asset? So when I think of cloud, I think of cloud as a capability that assists in having a larger percentage of the cost to provision a user going with the user when they go away. We can just turn them off, right? And then on the other side of that, if you're doing a joint venture or you're standing up a green field in a country far away or close by, how quickly can you stand up that operation and provision those users and that factory fully and have it up and operational? And then how much of those assets are on our balance sheet, so that if there's less of those assets on our balance sheet, that's a good thing. And the cloud has enabled that capability of cloud has enabled that, right? So
in this morning's conversations, when folks talked about the cloud, they talked about it from the perspective of the elasticity of the cloud, the agility of the cloud, the cost effectiveness. Now, you've addressed agility, elasticity.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about cost effectiveness and how you, as a buyer of cloud services, go about determining what you're going to put on the cloud and if you're going to put something on the cloud? What's your process?
Well, I try and keep it as simple as possible. At the heart of our strategy is people say, well, hey, what's your strategy for IT at Cargill? And I go, well, it's to do good IT. Well, what's good IT? Well, IT's like IT that a user can afford or a business can afford, right? It works. It's available when you need it. And if you need more of it, you can get it really fast because it doesn't, the lead time to provide capability is, if you think of IT as a factory, has gotten shorter and shorter and shorter, right? So months or years to get IT capability, that doesn't really work anymore. So how fast can you really bring that capability? And I'll just give you an example. Country of Japan, Cargill, fairly sizable business in Japan, and there's a requirement for timekeeping, time tracking for employees all over Japan, and there's a regulatory requirements that you have to meet. We weren't there. We needed to have a solution. We had one in Cargill. We have them all over the world, but a cloud solution can provide it at 3/4 less of the current cost of our solution, and instead of 12 weeks, it's 6, right? And you have the entire country outfitted. And since we're BYOD, bring your own device, it was kind of cool. We didn't have to really put it on any devices. It was just there, and people could start, doing their time tracking, right, at the new level of requirements that we had to do it. So, if you just go back a few years, that really wasn't the situation in terms of a deployment of a capability. If the employee goes away, I turn it off, right? So that's kind of cool. I would say that's good IT, right?
So one of the things that a CIO does not have is the ability to do things over again. However, there are inflection points in technology, and cloud is one of them. And sometimes those inflection points do open the door. So could you chat a little bit about if you could do things over, or are you now being able to do things kind of over because you have technology that didn't exist before, and how that kind of impacts your decisions about how some of the folks here's products might be perceived by you?
Yeah, sure. That's an interesting question. So I like to ask all the time, well, what would we do, right, if we could start all over again? You can't do that all the time, but you do get the chance in a company like Cargill and others. You know, really the problems I have as one of the leaders of a large platform of businesses inside of Cargill is the same as any IT leader in a smaller company. It's just more zeros on the end and maybe a little more risk at times on some of the decisions, but it's really the same stuff. If today involved in some startup of joint ventures where we're carving out parts of Cargill and other companies are carving out parts of their company, and we're going to have a joint venture. So the parents will both share in the performance, right, financial performance of the joint venture, and you look at that and you know, you get in a room in the traditional way, and I've been doing this for quite a few years now. System X, System Y, System Z from our company, System A, System B, System C from their company, and we're going to put them all together, and the new board of directors of that company will choose the systems and have the battles of the conversions that they make. And you know, now maybe it doesn't have to be that way, right? Now maybe you can go talk to a provider and instantly there's email, there's connectivity, there's collaboration. All of that's just turned on. Here's the number of users we need. Here's your monthly bill. And then from an ERP standpoint, right, you would have to go through a conversion in the new company anyway. If it came with two separate ERPs, you could decide to go with the two, right? Or you could say, hey, immediately following or a short period of time after, we're going to take the data from each and go into an ERP solution that we have no assets on our balance sheet that we're really depreciating, right, in the JV. And that company can get off and get running. Maybe that's how you would do it, right? And think about that. Maybe you could run that JV with just an IT leader, right? And not an IT leader and an entire staff of IT all around the world, right? So, I mean, those things are possible today.
Well, some of the CIOs that we deal with will tell us that 70% of their budget is allocated before they get up in the morning to running the business, and there's not much they can do about it. Less than 30%, sometimes significantly less than 30%, is to changing or innovating the business. How does cloud computing or other new technologies that you're dealing with right now enable you to affect that metric in your favor?
Yeah, so my feeling on that one is, as the IT leader, of how you approach that, right? I mean, if you're waking up thinking about your allocations and what you're bringing with you, and you're looking back all the time, and focusing on the problems it causes you and all those other things, then that's going to be the trajectory of how you lead. You gotta look ahead, right? So again, I'll go back to the life cycle, way of looking at things. If you look at your information technology environment, the entire thing, including all of the people that take advantage of it or use it, and you think of everyone life cycling, right? What's the life cycle of an ERP user in your company? I would ask that question. What is it? Is it 5 years? Is it 10? Have you even asked yourself that question yet? Right? So ask yourself that question and get your business thinking about how often it's life cycling, and look forward. And if you do that, right, and sell and go to market on some of those premises, your legacy will shrink. So our legacy, or my allocation to our businesses is going down, right? So we're working on, we're not near where we want to be yet, but we have line of sight and vision and plans and strategies that are more pointed towards, if the business shrinks, the IT shrinks. If the business increases, the IT can keep pace with it. And maybe, right, it shrinks as fast as the business shrinks, and it can increase faster than the business increases because the business wants that out there in front. So I'm being a little generic and high level here without getting into specifics, but we could talk about examples of estimating crop sizes and predicting futures and knowing what oil's going to do and things like that. There's information available, right, just out there in the world, and if you can collect that and get that forward to the types, and we have a lot of folks in Cargill that care about that information, and you have that available, you don't need any legacy to do that. So you can actually get rid of some old stuff, and you haven't added anything new, and you're providing more advanced information.
One of the things, in addition to cloud computing, that the group has talked about today as an inflection point is mobility computing. Paradigm is different for how you deal with mobility computing, something that as a CIO, obviously you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
So mobility computing by itself and in a cloud. Share your thoughts on that.
Sure. So I'll date myself. I got involved in IT somewhere around 1983, and I spent about 10, 15 years in the information technology field doing a variety of things. Was a CIO at WL Gore Associates, and then got into running some businesses, and then came back into IT. It was really fun and exciting in the 1980s. And into the maybe all the way to the early 90s, and then it got a little boring in IT. So I wandered off, and now I think it's a new time again, and it's really exciting to be in the function and to be leading in it. And I think mobility and some of the things and the advances around search and mobility and where you can bring information in terms of process data technology and where you can bring it in business is causing a rate of change, right, that's more than it's ever been. So the example, I'll give a short example. A pile of feed that cattle eat, and how quickly could you have the inventory of that managed back in your ERP system? Well, there was a process for doing that. There's a process for doing that today. Farmers don't necessarily do it. It's done for them. And now you can walk up with a device and take a picture, and you know exactly what's there and exactly what needs to be replaced. And you can take a picture of a crop field. These are brand new things, and you can see the density of flower buds in a certain square set of meters, and you can predict, right, based on rainfall information that you might have or weather patterns that you might have on exactly what the yield's going to be. That's huge, right? And mobility helps that happen, right? Mobility helps a lot of that happen. Mobility can help things like if you distribute product through a channel of distributors around, let's say, the country of India, and your distributors aren't going to have inventory systems, but you may have information on what you've distributed to them, and you know their rate of consumption or what their sales are. You can actually, when you can't get to them, you can have them help each other out based on information that you provide to them through a mobile device that they have. So these are just like completely different. If you designed that solution on a computer that's back in the office, you would never think of the paradigm-breaking ways of having people share information back and forth with a mobile device, right?
One of the other things that you heard...
The cloud helps that.
Cloud helps that.
Cloud helps that.
But one of the other things that you heard, because you were here for this part of the session, just the last 3 or 4 speakers, and we heard a little different in the morning session, so there's lack of unanimity, is security. So people have made the point that there is a...
This is my favorite question.
Reluctance to move to the cloud because of security. You're the buyer.
Sure.
You're the person that salespeople are going to and asking the question. And what are you seeing? What are you seeing from not only yourself but your fellow CIOs? And what are you seeing as trends in the industry in terms of that being an objection that is keeping people from moving stuff to the cloud?
Yeah, not from fellow CIOs, not enough forward movement on that. This is the way I'm not a problem on this issue. Security is critically important, right? But the question you ask your security guy is, do you have a Facebook account? And when he goes, yeah. So you've got your whole personal life online for people to search and look, and you're telling me I have a security problem because I want to put some data in the cloud. So there's the commercialization of IT and people doing their trading, their personal, right? Their wallet, their trading, their bank account, that's in the cloud, that's online, right? And it's lowering the threshold, or I would say it's not really lowering the threshold, it's closing the fear factor on what is secure and what is not secure, right? So it's basically been a fear factor. And I think also the news, right? So the hacking of information and things of that nature has not necessarily made people more fearful of putting their data out in the cloud or whatever. It's gotten them to get a little smarter about it, and so I think it's kind of helping. I think this is a barrier that's coming down because people are beginning to understand more and more about it. So I think security is always an issue. It's always something to concern yourself with, just like cost is and the other things that I mentioned. But if you have concerns about it, educate yourself on it. That's what I say to my peers. That's what I say to the folks that I'm responsible for leading. And you need to know about it, and we need to educate our businesses on it, and it needs to not be a barrier, right? And you sense very quickly when it's used as a barrier versus it's a requirement that has to be dealt with.
Do we have time for questions from the group? So why don't I turn that over to you, Andy?
Great job. All right, who's got the first one?
Thank you. One of the things you mentioned, like in Japan, that issue, in that conversation you were talking about bring your own device. I'm curious to know how that's gone as far as a security concern for internal IT. Because I think some CIOs worry about, well, if people bring their own devices, how do we make sure that their personal traffic doesn't infect internally, or perhaps vice versa? Would you say that's really successful, or what challenges were there, and do you think that's something that even cloud companies themselves should contemplate?
So it's bring your own device. We have it rolled out in North America. It's rolling out in Asia now. It's it's in Europe, but we don't have it everywhere in the world yet. I think we were met with all of the traditional challenges. What are we going to do if the person goes away and the information that they might have on it? For me, the reality was, having dealt with this at my place of employment prior to Cargill, is that information's already out there on multiple devices anyway, right? Salespeople, engineers, they have that information where it is convenient for them to have it, unless they are specifically by policy and by procedure, right, and by threat of being let go, right? That's what gets them to keep it on the one single device in the one place where you want to centralize that information. In terms of everything else, it's really the procedure and the policy, right, that puts the information where it needs to be. The device, right, enables it to be in other places, but if you don't have the policy, it's going to be there. So in a lot of cases, it was already out there.
So I forgot the cloud part of that question. Thank you for that. Has adopting cloud made that way of providing your users' needs easier?
I think so, right? I think so that's a selling point to me if you're selling cloud, would be, yeah, now we'll take care of it. We'll have it all in that one spot. We're the provisioner of that information for you. You always know where it is, right? We can tell you where we put it, and you have more of an idea than if you had that information on 20 or 30 different systems across your corporation.
Back here, Justin.
Justin, this is a dangerous question in a room full of vendors, but as a major buyer of services, I think it was Jeff or somebody put up the slide that kind of outlined the number of cloud providers, cloud vendors that are out there. How do you filter through that and actually find the partners that you want to work with?
Yeah, that's a dangerous question, right? So we have a couple right now. We're pretty far into business with Salesforce.com. So we so much so we have a Salesforce.com guy that everyone mistakes as a Cargill employee. So he walks around our buildings. But we've been quite successful with that company and their solutions. And then we have a variety of other smaller providers that really we got to meet because of their application and their solution. So we really haven't said, you are our, cloud provider or whatever. We filter through the decision making on, the speed, the cost, the requirements, right? What is it? And we'll go through an RFP process, and if the solution's a fit and it comes with cloud provider X versus cloud provider Y, we're going with X if X is the choice. So it's probably I'm probably going to regret this in a few years, but right now, it's the forward looking, and I'm not as worried about, having just one cloud provider or two or 20, right? I'm more worried about the value of the solution and can we get it there, and the whole situation of what happens, right, when the user of that cloud goes away, or if they have to go away, or something like that.
All right. I have one, so then we'll go right over here. In 2009, when I started at Rackspace, the CIO didn't want anything to do with the managed hosting discussion. It was only because of the concept of cloud being embraced, either marketing-wise at least or others. How long ago was it when you involved yourself in an infrastructure decision, and was there a defining moment where you stopped kicking that decision down several tiers below you, and it became something that you wanted to be in the meeting, you wanted to seek everyone's perspective on it? Any moment come to mind on when that changed and why, in your perspective?
No. So I guess if you worked for me, you might categorize me as someone who sweats the details, right? So I think the information technology profession rewards people that can do that, but still understand the business and the business impact and all that stuff. So I don't know that there was a point when I didn't keep myself up to speed on those things. I've been involved in infrastructure decisions, and we have some very major ones going on right now inside of Cargill, and I'm up to my eyeballs in it as I am on our joint ventures and acquisitions and all kinds of other things. So,
great.
I'm sensing a trend in your discussion that what's mostly important to Cargill, your organization, is the software as a service aspect of the cloud, getting the time reporting application. Is that true, or do you see a need for the platform and infrastructure as a service at Cargill? And then the second part of the question, if with the importance of the SaaS, how important is it to you that there be like kind of a marketplace for SaaS applications, or is that not as important? Do you just go to contractors or that have sort of a wide knowledge base as opposed to an electronic marketplace for applications?
Good question. I would say that software as a service, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, anything AAS on the end or whatever. That's how the market defines. That's how the market is segmented by the marketing people and the pricing people and the vendors. To me, the cloud is software as a service, infrastructure service, platform. I mean, that's the cloud, right? The cloud to me is what I was describing it at. Can I scale it? Can I flex it? Can I make it go away? And does it deliver on the value proposition or the business case that I'm trying to solve? So I have a business case today on a potential acquisition, right? I could make this up or it could be real, and we're going to carve it out of some company, and then I have to integrate it into my organization immediately, or I just have to stand it up on its own, right? Well, you know, I can do that differently today with cloud than you know, X number of years ago. So for me, I look at that's real innovation. That's real value, right? That's and that's on the bottom line of the acquisition integration and you know, P&L, which goes away after we're done. And if I'm not leaving a lot of assets, you know, depreciating in the business, we weren't able to do that a few years ago. In my lifetime, you know, it's only recently that that's even a possibility, and it's still not a possibility all the time. But we can talk about it now, we can plan for it, and we can try and make it happen, right? Not a pipe dream at this point.
Justin, it's more a follow-up question to what you just talked about, because a lot of times when we go after enterprise CIOs like yourself, the biggest challenge there is aligning that value that you stated, because there's the financial value of something where the pressure is always to continue to reduce the operational expense for your organization, for your team, for instance. But at the same time, you know, by going through X, you're essentially delivering value that may not be quantifiable. So how do you make it may not be quantifiable immediately, so you have to have some convincing within the organization of that. How do you essentially accomplish that, and what coaching would you give other CIOs? Because it seems like you've been successful doing that in your current role.
Value is the driver, right? So, so IT at Cargill is fairly sizable, a little larger than $1 billion, and you know, we're around the percentage that my colleague up here stated in terms of what it costs to run the plane or keep the lights on, or however you want to call, you know, flying and staying in the air. We call it run at Cargill. So we have a go-to-market organization. So I have business relationship managers that are aligned, right, to the businesses that they represent, and their primary objective is to understand that business and how it makes money as good as or better than anyone else in that entire business, and maybe to a level of detail beyond the business leader. So I'll call them a business leader of a business unit. We have, you know, multi-billion-dollar business units inside of Cargill. So these are not small businesses. Some of these business units, we, you know, inside Cargill redefines big, just like a few other corporations do. And these business units may be all over the world, and you're the business relationship manager or the CIO of that business unit. And you have to really understand the strategies, how it makes money, how it loses money, what its issues are, and then come up with value propositions that are doable, right? So we can, I call it, you know, taking the strategy from the PowerPoint out into the business, right? So the most effective strategy is one, I think, a lot of times that can actually be accomplished, right? Versus one that can't be accomplished. So I would say to you, really understand, and I say this to the team, my go-to-market team, really understand the business unit, really understand that business. And they have, if they're run well, a few focus points that they're working on, not 100. They have 3 or 2, right? And then they have some regulatory stuff. They have some employee things. So know those things and then just go in. And if you can understand that before you get there and demonstrate to me that you understand me before I have to put a lot of effort into understanding you, I'm going to spend more, you'll get more face time. So this is what I say to, I have a go-to-market team, and I have this exact conversation with them. And we'll review what is it we know about that BU, right? The people, the person, their problems. Okay, they got 6 problems. We're not going after all of them. We're going after 2, right? And we actually use Salesforce.com for the go-to-market IT people in Cargill. They're all outfitted with it, or at least all the ones in a very large part of Cargill right now. And we have opportunities. We turn the opportunity into a quote. right? And it's either a assemble to order, configure to order, or engineer to order. We try and stay away from the engineer to order because engineer to order doesn't get me a cloud solution. It gets me customizations in SAP and all kinds of other stuff like that, which take me away from my provisioning vision of each user, right? So that's the old way. We try and do things more the new way. So, you know, to simplify that down, it's basic stuff. You got to really understand the person you're gonna. If you get FaceTime with them, like really make sure that, you know, two goals. They know you understand them. Second goal, you get another meeting. Right? So, you know, get invited back. It's a common goal for every go-to-market person on my IT team is if you get invited to the BU, and we sit on the leadership teams of the BU or whatever, but when you get invited to really drive a discussion, make sure you get invited back to do it again, and then do it again, and then do it again. If they don't invite you back, then I get a call, and then you get invited somewhere else. You know.
Well, Justin, that's awesome. Jay, great interview. Thank you so much. Great job.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And a little plug for Jay from Impensa. So if you get a chance to check out impensa.com, it's an app and a methodology. The idea that big companies, when they try to save money, they don't keep track of it and tie it back to something. Well, that's a stated goal that they're able to successfully solve for. But the idea that every company can constantly be in the process of making themselves more cost effective, not just through technologies such as cloud, but throughout the organization, I think Jay's part of something that will become a massively big success. So Jay, great job. And Justin, thank you. You're one of the kind of people of the world that you don't interrupt. You let it go on as long as possible. And so is our. Thank you for being a part of the inaugural BigCloud event in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We'll see you next year in March. To all of you, thank you. To our sponsors, thank you very much. Have a great night, everyone.